Thokozani, I am already and welcome you to my channel. Thank you so much for viewing my video. Today I'll be talking about understanding idalwa zethu, or rather understanding amadlozi wethu. As you know, there are male, idlozi, and there's a female idlozi, and they relate differently from person to person, from gift to gift, and it's very important to understand so that you are able to navigate through this life. So that it's important to understand your ilozi and relate better, so that there is no conflict of interest between you and your ancestors, and you avoid being at a point of you don't get what's happening. It's very important to understand that as a person, ukuba umuntu onamadlozi, or rather living in with a gift, is not an easy thing, and not everyone will understand what I mean, or rather, or when you say good, it's not easy. It's always, I say, it's people who are in the boat that understand how strong the waves are. So it's just that. So people always have we always focus on the part of Uguti, yeah, madlozi this, but we forget the aspect that it's not easy, living namadlozi wethu, being with idlozi, because there's a case of utoluguti, you are female and you have a male ancestor, and you are male and you have a female ancestor, or you are female and you have a male and a female ancestor. And those personalities, or other characteristics, tend to clash and cause how can I put it, tend to cause a rift in your normal life. That is why people with gifts, are always probably those type of people that say they don't want to be around people, they don't like people, or they're having problems in relationships, or they're not married, or they don't have kids, or any of that. We forget that our spirituality, or rather our gifts, as much as it's a good thing, it tends to affect our natural way of life. So it's important to understand that you're a spiritual person carrying out your spiritual purpose. So expecting to live, or rather be in a natural life, or rather normality, that is far from it. So let's look at being a female and having a male ancestor. One, things that are commonly there is that signs that are there is that male ancestors are very dominant, they're very patriarchal, they like to dictate, and that is why sometimes you find abantu besifazane abanamadlozi, awesilisa, they are not in relationships, they prefer to be on their own, because it's so hard to relate to a male figure, especially who's going to come in your life and want to dictate. And that dictatorship should not be in conflict with your spirituality. So that tends to be a problem. That's why 80% of the time they are alone. Another thing is that they have problems, if abahlushwa, it's izinto ezimayelana nesibeletho, like menstrual cramps, menstrual problems, and all those other things. It's off the likes. That you are carrying idlozi elomuntu lesilisa. And I know someone might be looking at this video and thinking, no, like, these people are possessed. No, we're not possessed. Sometimes it's so difficult to explain some things, but this is for people who are in the boat. You don't have to understand it if you're not in it. Like, it's just as plain as that. Another thing is balding. Yes, or hair loss, or hair texture. Your hair changes, when you have a male ancestor, and everything just it changes. Your tolerance of people around you is very very minute. Conceiving sometimes tends to be a problem. Abanye tend to have maybe one kid or two kids in their lifetime. Abanye don't even have kids at all. Some have kids and then iziso ziyachitheka. And I know sometimes you go to people and they say, no, your ancestor this and no, girl, it's just your ancestors got problems. And sometimes you find it's difficult for such people to be in relationships. You find that they have partners because they always feel there's this thing missing inside of them. No, it's like your ancestors sitting by the corner and like, "Spunubana, if you're gonna find the right match, you know." So it's that. So if you are, and then a female ancestor is better because at least a female ancestor on a female woman, on a female rather, is more understanding. You know, they get to be in relationships, they get to marry, they get to have kids, they are more nurturing. So in a nutshell, think of a male and a female personality. So that tends to cause conflict rather, you know, when it comes to trying to fit in a natural space or fit in a natural setting. So you'll always be that person, you know, that's gonna stand out, that's gonna stick out, you know, no matter how hard you try. So you need to always understand what your ancestors want for you, because sometimes you might find you're not in relationships not because, or your relationships don't make sense. It's because you, you can't have someone that comes into your life and wants to dictate how you should carry out your spiritual life or live your spiritual life, or they want to come in between you and your spirituality. Someone that comes into your life should be someone that is going to add value to you, you know, to understand who you are and not try frustrate your spirituality whereby you're not in line with your spiritual. Because trust me, if you know that your partner has a male, you know, idlozi, you need to know that that is going to be a very strong personality, and it's either you make a note and ukuthi uzodila nayo loyo muntu loyo, or don't even be in that relationship. Because trust me, spiritual people are not easy people at all, you know. But they're not easy people, but it takes a certain type of understanding and a certain type of, you know, growth to understand that this is what I'm with, this is who I'm dealing with, and when the moods are there, I should just back up, you know, back up a little bit and not be into it like that. So it's very important that you understand your guides and you communicate with your guides and understand their plans for you. Because there are people that are loners, you know, and they say Guti, they don't have certain things, they can't do certain things, or rather have taken on certain things. Because one thing we have to understand, that our ancestors are not living their lives through us. No, they're not. They are here to fulfill their spiritual purpose. So now sometimes them making decisions for us tends to like clash with what we want, like how we view as living our lives for ourselves. So it's very important to understand you as that in any setting, you know, it's very hard. And then sometimes you find that you're a male and you have a female ancestor, you don't last in relationships because your grand will be sussing out the them hoes from a distance, you know. And sometimes, you know, you'd find ukuthi umuntu oyindoda they're very neat, they're very tidy, they are like you know, and they like their things to the par, and you can't, like, those people are just downright drama, you know. And whereas male on male is you know, it's like I said, Guti, it's better if you're female. So fortunate enough, I have the taste of both worlds, and it's not easy, trust me, because I have to balance the personalities so that they do not clash, you know, in my daily living, you know, and all of that. So it's good to understand that, because we always focus on the seriousness of Uguti Amadlusi this and all of this. There's also the fun side, there's also the stressful part, and there's also the part you need to find yourself and understand yourself and know good things when they happen. I mean, if you look at life with spiritual eyes and look at life as being spiritual, you tend to understand a lot of things, you know. We tend to focus good, hey, and then you find good, you forget that there's life even phakathi kwabo lobungoma labo. There is life, you know, there is life post Uthwasa. It's just that you need to navigate yourself and find yourself, and don't get lost in just being a sangoma and not knowing your purpose and not knowing your ancestors and not understanding. So people would always say with him, in being a relationship, you know, rather with isangoma, you need to go to ukunge and do all those things. I always say, will you meet every guy or will you meet every girl, and every guy and girl really cool? I mean, that is why I say some other things need a certain type of spiritual growth and spiritual understanding if umuntu has been led into your life. Because you need to understand that as a spiritual person, people come into your life for a lesson, for a spiritual transition in your life, for you to help them. So sometimes not everyone uzeguwe is there to stay. So can you imagine taking everyone, you go uyakhunga when I don't believe in that, you know. I believe if something is meant to happen, it is, if it's led or rather joined by the ancestors, you don't need to go through so much drama. Because imagine you today ngiyakhunga and next week I break up with John and I meet Sam naimela ngikhunga, and God aveli khunga idlozi. So it's very important to understand that sometimes in our personal life we tend to put our spirituality phakathi kweimpilo zethu and make it look as if into enzima. I think once you start to understand spirituality in a different sense, you'll stop looking at things as with all seriousness. So it's very important to understand that we are very difficult people sometimes to live and or rather coexist with, but do not, you know, feel as if when there's something wrong with you and look at yourself and be like, oh, I'm the black sheep, I'm not dating anyone. And do not forget that these people are our parents. At the end of the day, they always want the best for us. Sometimes you're alone because it's for the betterment of the purpose, because they feel good. Should there be a John or a Sam is going to distract you, you know. And if Sam is a distraction, it's either or they're gonna show you dirt on Sean or whoever, you know. So it's very hard to navigate in this life, but you need to know yourself as a spiritual person and don't try to fit in normality, you know. Fit in your normal. Like our normal is this, you know. Don't try to be so normal that you lose yourself and try and think what you want to fit in everything. Like I always say, once you accept yourself, once you accept everything, once you accept who you are, everything begins to make sense, and you stop asking questions like, ooh, what is happening with me? Am I doing the wrong thing? Am I the right thing? I lose you know, interest in sex, you know. I'm not interested in any sexual encounters with my partner, or I'm losing interest in my partner. There is that time, you know. Sometimes your ancestor gives you space, but you will not even look at a guy and be like, ooh, he or me. You'll just be looking at him like, oh. Some people are like that permanently, because sometimes you find good and wants to work with you, and obviously you're gonna lose interest in your partner or lose interest in sexual encounters or whatever how you look at it. So don't feel as if you're the black sheep. It's a struggle. We are here, we are together, and I got you. So yeah, so don't look at it in a bad light. Always view things as for your betterment and for your growth. So I hope this video was informative, and with time I hopefully do another one, a part 2 on this, and shed more light on understanding that as understanding Gutis Namandlos, you also need to understand Guti. You cater differently for male ancestors and female ancestors, and as much as Nati we women as is a lot, that's the same thing, you know. You need to understand. And as much as male are dominant and patriarchal, because like, just know that sit down with your person and understand. And now don't take advantage because you got a male ancestor. No, don't do that. Don't sit down, shala pansy. So yeah, it's like that. So anyway, I am Poabadimu. This was a part 1 video. I hope you stay tuned to my channel for more content. Thank you so much for viewing. Thokozani.